talking about communion this morning and sharing communion together. So I didn't come up with any notes. I just kind of wanted, sometimes I get distracted by trying to fill out the blanks. So this morning, you could just sit and listen and enjoy, okay? And focus on Christ this morning, because that's what communion is all about. How many people in here have dreams at night and can remember their dreams? Right? All right, good many. I have talked to people who don't remember their dreams. They're like, I never dream. And so I'm thinking they probably do. They just don't remember their dreams. But when we have a dream, when we dream something at night, it always has an emotional connection with us, right? Like if you have a nightmare and you wake up, you're like terrified, and that sticks with you. You can feel that. You're like almost like it happened to you. If you have a good dream, you wake up and you're happy, and then what do? We go to work, we tell our, friends, man, I had this crazy dream last night. You're not going to believe. And, when I woke up, I was scared to death. I thought it really had happened, something bad had happened to me, but it really hadn't. It was just a dream, but it connects with us. Well, I had this dream one time, and I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with the Lord's Supper? Probably nothing, but it does. Just stay with me. So I had this dream one time. I'm a big Switchfoot fan, which is a rock group that are of Christian guys. And I know a lot of you have heard of them, but I've probably seen them in concert, 6 or 7 times. Big fan for the past years. And so one time I had this dream. And I dreamt that I was at a Switchfoot concert and I was backstage with the guys hanging out, right? This is my dream. And so you can think about the emotions, the feelings that I had. I was dreaming this dream, the feelings you have when you experience these dreams. And so they looked at me and said, look, the lead guitarist can't make it tonight. It's up to you. And y'all are laughing, the folks that know me, because there's no musical talent in my family at all. Singing, playing, nothing. But to me, it's my dream, right? So it's exciting, I'm thinking, it's my dream. Okay, I can do this. It must be a dream. I can do whatever I want, right? So they hand me the guitar and this is no lie. This is what I'm dreaming in my dream. I'm not making this up. So I go on stage, right? And I'm standing there and there's thousands of people, at this concert, and they start the show. And I start trying to play the guitar, in my dream. Well, obviously I can't play the guitar even in my dream. And so I'm standing there trying to play, thinking, okay, I got to do the best I can. I got to do this, I'm in front of all these people and they're counting on me. And John Foreman, the singer, next thing I know in my dream, he just walks over to me, doesn't say anything, and just goes like this. And I'm like, okay. So I went from being way up here to way down here. I had to walk off, and when I woke up, I just started laughing to myself. That was so funny. But the disappointment, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a star, but I was just so disappointed. So what does that have to do with the Lord's Supper? So when I think about the Lord's Supper, especially the first Lord's Supper, we call that the Last Supper, when Jesus met with his apostles and they had the Lord's Supper. I think about the emotions and the feelings that must have been present in that room. Think about the apostles and how they had spent 3 years with Jesus, traveling around with him, listening to his teachings, and anticipating that the kingdom was coming. And they were, you think about the week leading up to that Passover meal that they had together. With Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, riding on the donkey and everybody praising him, and all the things that happened that week, and the anticipation, of being in that place with Jesus in the holy city, in the city of Jerusalem. You think about the things that they were thinking about as they led up to that Passover meal. They must have been anticipating Jesus coming into power. Taking over. He's the Messiah. That's what's going to happen. He's told us that that's who he is, and we believe that's who he is. Have you ever spent time? Probably everybody has spent time dreaming about something that they really, really wanted, like to win the lottery. Win that $400 million or whatever. Filling out the publisher's clearinghouse thing. We all think about, what would you do? Would you quit your job? Would you stay, here? Would you live somewhere else? And so we dream about those kinds of things, and we think about those, what could be? What could be if I had that kind of money, or if this happened to me, if I got that job, or if I got that spouse, or whatever it might be that you dream of. Has anybody ever been to the Holy Land? I've never been there. Anybody ever been there? A couple of people? I've never been there, but I can imagine what that's like being in that place, walking where Jesus walked and all the history that goes along with that. And so I think about the apostles that week as they spent time with Jesus in that place, anticipating, ruling with him. That's what they were thinking about. They were thinking about what was coming up and what was going to happen. They knew the history before Jesus, and David and King David and all the, the building of the temple and all that stuff, all the history they knew. And, that was their home. That was their worship place. When they came to Jerusalem, that was the place where they would come together and worship and celebrate. And so there must have been a lot of excitement with them. When we think about the apostles' hopes and dreams and the things with Jesus as they followed him and the promises that he had made to them. They had spent those 3 years investing in their whole lives in him and their whole, their time and everything, their careers. And when they came to that supper, that Last Supper, the communion, the Passover time that they spent together, there must have been an air in that room of excitement and anticipation. We know that because Luke 22 says that they were arguing amongst themselves of who's going to be the greatest. When the kingdom comes, who's going to be number one? And you've probably seen the picture of, the Last Supper where they're all seated. There's some on the outside, there's some closer to Jesus. We knew that's kind of how it was because when, if you read some of the conversation that happened during that, there were different apostles close to him and some on the outside. And so they were arguing amongst themselves, when the kingdom comes, who's going to be number one? Who's going to be number two? This is going to happen. They believe this is going to happen. Or you don't argue about something you don't believe. They were convinced this is what's coming up. They were going to be the rock stars. They were going to be the heroes of Israel because, they were Jesus's buds. They were going to rule with him. That's what they were thinking. But as great as their excitement must have been, from way up here, just like my dream, I'm going to be a star, I'm going to reign with Jesus. In just a few hours, it went from up here all the way down to here when Jesus was arrested, put on trial, and sentenced to death. Just a couple of hours, they went from, we're going to reign with him, to, oh no, now we've got to hide because they're going to come after us. They're probably going to be looking for us to put us to death because we were his followers. As we come to the Lord's table, I was just thinking a little while ago, I've been a Christian, I guess, almost 40 years. And I can't tell you how many times I've taken the Lord's Supper, probably at least 12, 13 times, 14 times a year. We always focus on something different aspect of the Lord's Supper and try to help us get the meaning behind this time that we spend together, sharing the Lord's Supper and sharing communion together. One of the things that we often think about as we come to this table is the word hope. And I like that we sang that song just a few minutes ago about hope. Our hope is in Jesus Christ. And so when we come to this table, one of the themes that we focus on is the theme of hope. And again, that theme of hope kind of deals with our emotions because that's where we feel it, right? We feel it right here when we hope something. There are a lot of different types of hope, a lot of different objects of hope. That you think about things, well, I hope I get a good job. I hope I win the lottery. I hope I don't get the coronavirus. Just things that we think about that we hope for. I hope I pass this test. I hope I find a good spouse. I hope I don't lose my job. There's a lot of different things that we hope in, and we use that word hope. But when we're talking about simple hope that we have day to day, hopes and dreams that we have, they're all based on the object of what I want, things that I desire, right? So you say, I hope I get a job. That's a good job. That's something that I'm wanting, I'm wishing for, hoping for. And so those are things that we want. There are different desires that we have. Sometimes they're good things, sometimes they're bad things. And there's also another aspect of hope that can be dangerous to us if we're not careful, in that we can put all our time and energy and thoughts into something maybe that's never even going to happen. We can hope for things that maybe aren't realistic, right? You understand what I'm saying? And we probably everybody's done that, you know. Like if you were a student in school and didn't study for your test, you know, you come to school and you hope that you're going to pass. Well, probably not, because you didn't study. You know, hope doesn't have anything to do with that. That's just something you wish for. But hope can also be a dangerous thing in that it can almost be a crutch to get us from, and I'm talking about worldly hope, our own selfish desires, not godly hope. But we can also use, you know, a certain type of hope just to get us from day to day. And that's our own thinking, you know, relying on our own thinking and our own hope, you know, hoping in this or hoping in a wish that I have here or something like that. But the Bible talks about a different type of hope. It talks about a different type of placing our hope not in my own selfish desires, but placing my hope in God's promises. That's what we can have hope in, and it can be consistent. The kind of hope that is dangerous, is putting the strength on my own desires, just what I wish for. The godly hope is the hope that we put in God's promises to us that He will meet our needs, whatever they might be. More often than not, it doesn't matter how much we hope for things. Some things just aren't going to happen just because we put our hope in them. Things in the world and things that my own dreams. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not wrong to have hopes and dreams. Everybody should have hopes and dreams and things that they want to see happen, you know. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we put our faith in that rather than in God, that's where it becomes dangerous. As Christians, we can always put our hope, that's what we just sang about, in Jesus Christ. Because He's always faithful. He will be faithful to us, and we can always count on that. The outcome will always be consistent when we put our hope in Him. We can always be sure that the hope we have in God, that's the object of our hope, is consistent. It's not in vain. Now, as we go from day to day through our lives and through our times, we have the ups and downs. We have the highs where we're way up here, you know, and then we're way down here in despair or disappointment or depression even sometimes, or doubt. Just like the apostles, after that Lord's Supper, they shared that time with Jesus. The next day, they were all hiding. They were all doubting. They were all in despair because, hey, this person we thought was the Messiah, he's not. They're going to kill him. He's going to be put to death. We put our, you know, all our hopes and our dreams in this guy, and he's not the one. They were disappointed. So when we come to the Lord's table, we think about how important that hope is for a future. We're reminded that the hope that we have in Christ is not in vain, but that we can count on that. It's consistent. And so when we come to the Lord's table, a lot of things are happening, but one of the things that we look at is the future. We're doing this together, looking to the future. Psalm 62:5 says this. It's up on the screen. You can read this along. The psalmist writes, "Rest in God alone, my soul." He's talking to himself. When we feel despair, we feel disappointed, we feel depressed, he says, "Rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will not be shaken." When we think about those early Christians, you know, not just the disciples in the supper there, but in the years to come, the first early Christians who were living in Jerusalem, and then he started spreading out and meeting from house to house. Communion was an important time for them, especially. It's an important time for all of us, But for them, because they were living with an expectation that it might be any day now, Jesus said, I'm coming back. Do this in remembrance until I come back. And so they were meeting together. Every time they met together in communion, they were meeting with anticipation. Hey, this might be the last time we have communion together here on earth without Jesus. The next time we have it, we might be with him, because it was so close to that time when he had promised them that. Luke 22 says this, verse 14 and 16, it says, when the hour came, he reclined at the table and the apostles with him. Then he said to them, I have fervently desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. So each time they ate that bread and they drank that juice, they were thinking, next time maybe with Jesus. The communion time is the time we spend together reflecting on ourselves and on our sin. And as we gather together like this, we're encouraging one another with hope that, hey, there is coming a time when we'll sit down and we'll have this communion time with Jesus. But until then, we spend this time together encouraging one another and meeting with one another and building each other up and giving each other hope, encouraging each other with the idea that, hey, this is not all there is. There's going to be something. We're going to see Jesus again. In 1 Corinthians 11, Paul says, for as often as you eat this bread and you drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And so when we do that together, that's why it's so important that we have communion as a church, because we're doing this together. We're showing each other, and we're also showing the world that we believe that one day Jesus is coming back. And so we eat this bread and we drink this cup with that anticipation. We should have the same anticipation that the early church had, that, hey, this might be the last time we do this together in this church. Next time it might be with Jesus. And so we think about that, and it encourages us and gives us hope. And so this morning, as we do that, as we pass the bread around, as we pass the cup around, think about that. This might be the last time we have it together in this room that's almost paid for, right? So whenever we have the Lord's Supper, we also give some encouragement to us, because we're supposed to come together and examine ourselves, Paul says, that we're to think about our own lives and the sin that we have in our life, and we're to examine ourselves so that the Lord doesn't do that for us. He doesn't judge us. You don't have this on the screen, but 1 Corinthians 11:27 says, therefore, whoever eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of sin against the body and the blood of the Lord. So a man should examine himself in this way. He should eat the bread and drink the cup, for whoever eats and drinks without recognizing the body eats and drinks judgment on himself. So if you're here this morning, you might be a guest, and you may not even understand what salvation is all about. You may not know Christ. You may be a seeker. You may be looking. I'm looking for answers. If that's you, we just say, hey, when the juice and the bread go by, just let it pass. Nobody's going to look at you funny. But the time that we share this time of hope together is for God's children, for followers of Jesus Christ. And so we just say, if you're not one of them, that's okay. If you're not a follower, that's okay. Just let it go by. Also, as the guys are passing out, this is a time that we use to examine ourselves, to think about what kind of sin is in my heart that I haven't confessed. And so that's a good time to examine yourself and do that. So right now, our guys are coming, and we're going to pass out the bread and the juice. And once they're all done with that, hold on to them, because we're going to take communion together, okay?